I've decided to divide this very video into 4 different chapters. 4 different chapters, also 4 different numbers. It's divided up this way for your ease of learning curve. Now, it's very, very important that you understand that if you do not understand chapter 1, you will not understand chapter 2. If you do not understand chapter 2, you will not understand chapter 3. If you do not understand chapter 3, you will not understand chapter 4. This means learn chapter 1 first. Then you move on to chapter 2, and so on. If you decide to not do that, you will have, as you jump, let's say, to chapter 3, you will be screwed over when you reach chapter 4, and you will have to jump back to chapter 1 and relearn everything from the ground up. Everything starts at chapter 1. You need to understand chapter 1 in order for you to understand chapter 2. How this model works is that everything fits together in a beautiful, beautiful story. A storyline. A red line running through the market. Explainable. Every tick up to the weekly, monthly, yearly chart. It works at all times of day, any given session, on anything that moves. And this is what took me from $50 to my name to living in a $2.5 million apartment as a 25-year-old. Now you decide if you want to stick at those $50 to your name, or if you want to take this step by step and actually learn this stuff. So let's start at chapter 1, breathing rooms. Now, breathing rooms is something that is pretty subjective. When we look at the model that I'm operating out of every single day in the market, no matter if it's FOMC or news or this and that, or if it's midnight or wherever and whenever I want to operate the market, I will be able to. The breathing rooms are defined by not rules. See, since the model that I'm operating out of is highly, highly subjective, I don't want to restrict myself with too many rules. I want to be able to enter the flow state as soon as possible. This also makes it easier for scalpers to understand when and how and where to potentially be looking at something. Why it's called a breathing room, or as many people in my focus group call it, the BR, as a shortening word, since, of course, right, since I'm a trader, I need a lot of small, tiny words, right? But the breathing room is essentially when price moves one way, this being from that point, moving up to this high, taking a breath, and then moving higher again. Price moves again up, moves down lower, takes a breath, and then moves higher. You can also see it as a runner. If that person is running up a hill, and it's a hill that never really stops, don't you think that that runner will have to some time just stop, catch a breath, drink some water, and then continue the climb? They have to rest at some point, right? See, since the market that I watch every single day is pretty subjective, I need to make sure that it sticks to being a story for me. I need it to be a story that I can visualize in my mind. It's not no only bunch of candlesticks and this and that. It's not a bunch of swings up and down. That's not helping me. How my mind works is that it's moving up, taking a breath, and continuing. That's all it is. Some people might say, but Jay, where's a bunch of rules on this? Well, I'm here to be completely honest with you guys, and by having too many rules, it stops me from reading price in a very efficient way. See, I thought the same as many of you of having, I need a bunch of rules to stick to this and that. Not necessarily. The reason why a lot of people need a bunch of rules to certain things is because you do not trust yourself enough. And that's the truth. And the reason why you don't trust yourself is most likely because you're coming from a model that have 5 billion different things that you can learn from. The informational loop. There's too many things to look at, so you need to restrict yourself. You need to have rules to restrict yourself. But a bunch of people that are operating my model, I haven't mentioned a single rule when it comes to breathing rooms. I essentially say, what do you think that is? What does it look like? Based on what you are seeing, what does it look like? Well, it looks like it's moving up. It's barely taking any breath here. It just basically slows down a bit and then moves higher. Would you call that a breathing room? And they say no. Well, then it's not a breathing room. See, rules are good to have. I'm not saying that rules are bad. And there definitely is some rules upcoming. But when I created this model, I did never think about rules. I started with seeing the story and understanding what a breathing room is. That didn't need any rules. It was, when does J think price moves up and stops? And based around that, the breathing rooms was created. You could also say, if we add on to this, we have more breathing rooms, right? We can also have breathing rooms to the downside. We can also have breathing rooms that are smaller. And clearly, we can have inside of these breathing rooms if you move up the time frames, we have breathing rooms inside breathing rooms. See, there is a lot of definitely different subjective things when it comes to breathing rooms, but the most important part that you need to understand is that breathing rooms, they're highly subjective into what you are seeing. See, that's what makes the difference. At the end of the day, when you're watching a model, that's what makes the difference. You. You make the difference. And all the complicated additional information and 5,000 different ideas or creators or mentors that build 5,000 different things in terms of information, 5 billion different informational models out there. They keep on building new stuff and new stuff and new stuff. All right. But if it actually worked, I see that we can develop new things, right? But if it actually worked, what you were doing, if you already found the best thing, wouldn't you operate based around that? See, that's why I haven't created any new things. That's why I'm only focusing on this one thing called the shit show model. And I'm still to this day only watching breathing rooms as a start. This is chapter 1. Let's move on to chapter 2. So now we're coming in on chapter 2. This is when we start to connect the dots. Now we're starting with the numbering part. The red lines being the breathing room. The breathing room goes to the upside. Then we have the green one running right back down to sweep that breathing room. That is the breathing room low, breathing room high, and breathing room high. Some people call it swing. Some people call it, I don't know, milk package. I don't know what people call it. For me, that's a breathing room because I want it to be subjective. I want it to be almost like a character. And you will see that over time with the model, that is just a sequence that is playing out. It's a character moving up and down in a specific pattern, in a specific way, and telling you where it's going to move before it does it. So, without us understanding that this is a breathing room right here, we will not be understanding this part. You will need to recognize these breathing rooms before you move on to chapter 2. And funny enough, chapter 2 is also where my 2 is located. And before we move on, I'll just explain a bit on how this model was created. How the model was created is pretty fascinating. It goes very much deeper in the 6 week program, clearly, in the why aspect of things and applying this to the market and applying how I'm thinking. You're just getting the tip of the iceberg here, but I still want you to be able to have this knowledge at hand. It's the same knowledge, but on a very much deeper level to understand the why. Why is the best question you can ask yourself in any sort of place in the world, in your life, around you to find success. 100% over. The question why. First and foremost, I ask myself, what do you see, Jay? I was sick and tired of informational loops, unicorn models, time based ranges, kill zone, London, New Wog, IFVG, FVG. Well, you could say it works, but it's too complicated. It's if it's everywhere, if it's billions of different objectivity things, you will always blame the market, not yourself. So over time, if you're stuck in some sort of informational loop, you will not get anywhere. You will just run around in a circle and never reach really what matters. And that's the psychology, your mind. So one of the powerful things with this model is actually that it's so simple that the information begins and it ends. You have that, in my opinion, and many other big creators that I've watched what I'm doing, but I'm explaining this to them. They say that I have never seen this ever before. Ever. Some creators have actually just changed their perspective because I showed them this. So what I saw was, what is simple? Where is price bouncing? How is it moving? What does it like? Make it a person. I'm a great storyteller. Definitely. That's one of my major things. I like to see the story within things. I like to see how it's connected. I like how to see how, if you look at the society, how is everything connected with how the money is being transferred this and there, and how it's given out to this, but this also affects this and this affects that. That's what I like to do. I like to do that throughout my entire life. And also, I have a very, very, very simple mind. I believe everything can be solved through simplicity. Simplicity is key. So the first thing I said was, what do you see, Jay? And I noted, where does price bounce? Okay, when we sweep that low. Not too much. But then I saw that. I'm not saying the market looked exactly like this when I looked at it. But what are the things that connect these two levels? And now I looked at, first and foremost, this area. Like, that's just a low, right? But then I said, but where does that low, how is it formed? Where does it come from? Well, it comes from what it looks like to sweep this area, bounce off from it, and do multiple things, and then run it and bounce away from it again. In the same way that it did it over here. This looked to be very efficient because it moved up and then moved right back down into it. And this one, it left it and run back down and shot away from it. So it looks like this is not as sufficient as this one. This is a sufficient sequence. This is a inefficient sequence. Efficient, inefficient. And I saw these two levels and I said to myself, oh man, there's a lot of things going on at these levels, man. It's a freaking shit show level. It's a freaking shit show around that level. Hence, shit show model was created. I found number 2. Because at the end of the day, that was a number 2 that swept a breathing room. That was a 2 that swept a breathing room. And I started to see this within price everywhere. Now I started to create the story, the characteristics behind it, the sequence to turn around, the sequence to do this and that on multiple time frames at the same time everywhere. It was everywhere. I now dug down into the why. And when I dug down into the why, which I'm not doing in this specific video, holy shit show. Let me tell you. Because this is the technical stuff. If you only knew what is going behind, if you only knew what is going behind these levels, behind these moves, in every turning point, every tick of price, what is playing out. Once you see this market structure, everything else fades within 3 weeks. Yes, you heard me right. And I can give you that promise. 3 to 4 weeks in the 6-week program, you will no longer see anything you've learned before. Because this is so powerful that it trumps your brain to say, how in the world does anything else even exist in the market? The shit show was created, and it's literally predicting the future. But more on that when we go back into the video of chapter 4, rather. I'll throw this now back to Jay as I've explained how the shit show model was essentially created. So as you were gone listening to the explanation on how the shit show model was created, I decided to note down the number 1 up top as well. See, it's very important that we mark out the number 2 first. The number 2 needs to be marked out first. When we marked out the number 2 by sweeping a breathing room, that 2 is officially a 2 whenever we are sweeping what? The breathing room high. Whenever we sweep the breathing room high, we have number 1. So essentially, you could say that the first thing being created is number 2. And by 2 doing its job of sweeping this high, we create number 1. This right here is my highest probability setup. I will say that this is what 95% of all shit show traders are using. The number 2. Number 2 taking this high out. Or flipping upside down, a 2 taking a low out. This is what sets off the sequence. By just us running that low, we're potentially setting off the number 2 to do a specific thing. In this case, 2 running up here. As we are running up here and sweeping this high, we also create number 3. Number 3 has a specific job, and we will go over that in chapter, believe it or not, chapter 3. But the correlation between number 2 and 1 have different jobs. See, I'm not saying that you should take number 1 into this low. Why? Because essentially, price could simply do this over and over, meaning it's nothing. Because as mentioned, number 1 can only be created when 2 actually runs this high. And this is a measure of significance, you could say. So number 2 runs into this area, and number 1 will be important in chapter 4 as we move on. This, as soon as number 2 runs this high, this is where we create the famous shit show level. And as mentioned before, this is the level that I took note of as I created the model. This is the level that changed my life and how I see the market. How a lot of things are playing out at this specific level. You might also realize at this point that, holy smokes, chapter 1 and chapter 2 are going by very fast. Yes. Because in my opinion, you will not find as a specific model, you will not find something that is as powerful yet as simplistic as this. And only if you knew how many things this model is covering. And I didn't know that until I started to speak with a lot of big creators in the industry. I didn't know how much this covered. This could explain how the big creators took their entries that they didn't want to explain. I could explain why they got into an entry, where they got into an entry. I was able to explain that this is a very high probability trade. They start to laugh and say, that's the exact trade I took. How did you know? And I said, I didn't. But the shit show model knew where you're supposed to enter. See, we have billions of things. We have new dog. We have silver bucket. We have all unicorn on breakers. I don't know. Fair value gaps. That's old news, guys. I don't use any of that. I use numbers. I literally count to 5. I will count to 5 and I will get better setups than these guys. I will have smaller stops. I will have 1 to 3 point stops. And not only me, but people that are studying the Shitro model. And that's how I know it's powerful, because it's not only me that can figure it out. It's 22.7% of people in 4 months that become profitable using this. 22.7. It's simple. It's very simple, yet extremely powerful. And that combined with hard work can get you very, very, very far, my friend. Let's move on to chapter 3. Why don't we? Chapter 3. Also fun enough. Number 3. Now we understand the breathing rooms. How the 2 is being formed. How the 2 is being formed, and in turn, how number 1 is existing because of that 2. We understand that when the number 2 runs this high, we also create number 3. And this is where it starts to be very interesting. Because as we move on, we will also pretty quickly realize that it's starting to take a shape and form. But this is when it becomes more subjective. This is pretty straightforward. This what is right here. Sweep a breathing room, create a potential 2, run this high here to create number 3. But number 3 can do different things. It has a different characteristic. You could see it as a child teenager, does a bit of everything, does a bit of whatever they want. They would rather say no sometimes and then they say yes sometimes, right? This is just the child that does everything what the parent says. Because what the parent says is, at the end of the day, the law of the child. That's number two. Number three, on the other hand, is the teenager that think they know exactly what they want, but not all the time. That's number three. See, number three can also do this. It has different pathways. If that's number three, and the job of number three is to potentially run the shit show level sitting right below here, from coming from what? Number two. That was created by running the number one high here. So we know that that's a shit show level right below. Number three has a job to potentially decide to run that shit show level, or number three could move up. Now, the difference between these two is taking place right here. Whenever we run that high again, by trying to run lower and then saying, you know what, I don't want to run that shit show level, and it runs itself. This too is no longer of interest in terms of creating chapter 4. The number 4 is not interested in running that low again right now. If Price were to do this very thing right here, this entire sequence is, so to say, done. If Price tried to run lower, and then you say, but Jay, isn't that pretty subjective? Indeed. What is a breathing room? Subjective. What do you see? What do you think? Did Price try to go lower and decided, I'm not going to, and then ran itself? Price could also look in comparison like that. And now my question to you, my friend, is would you call that a try to run lower? Believe it or not. But some people say no. Some people say yes. And then we can move it up even further. Would you call that a try to run lower? Now more and more people are going to say no. Would you call that a try to run lower? More and more people are going to say no. See how it's highly subjective here. This is not something that there's not a state of fact, not a state of truth. It's not a state of this and that. It's what do you see? I'm trying to add you to the picture. I'm taking your brain and applying it in the market. And that's what a lot of gurus don't tell you because they want you to be stuck in that information loop. Now, that's the difference between me and them. I want to do a deed. I want to see people succeed in the same way I've seen success. I want to be the person that past Jay only wish existed. The one person that he was looking for, but he could not find. That's what I'm trying to be. And that's why I have this one rule, and that's learn, practice, and piss off. That's the main thing. Actually, I have two rules. Second rule being become better than the creator himself. I want you to become better than me at my own model. You're targeting my back. You need to become better than I am. Because otherwise, people like us, like me, very, very profitable, successful people, we will eat you up. That's the truth. Nobody told me that as I was learning. I thought 3-4 hours was putting in the work, but now I know that people are pulling off 18 hours straight back testing. That means they have at least 4 times the upper hand of me. So I'm very strict about that. But the difference between me and a lot of gurus out there, they will create billions different informational loops so you get stuck forever. It's not how I work. I give you the real deal, something that works, something that I trade every single day, something that all people in the shit show model trade every single day. They operate it. They're successful with it. See, that's the difference between me and your average guru. I don't create informational loops because I will not create more information. I'm sitting comfortably with this. Of course, I will develop new things because my mind just needs to ease off a bit sometimes, right? But that's a different story. This works so well that everything else disappears. That's why market structure also disappears. It's a great start. That's where I'm coming from. But this is way, way, way stronger. And if you think about it, market structure, imagine how many models are built on market structure. This is the complete opposite. These are numberings, and numberings appears before the chart expresses itself in candlesticks. Say that again. The numbers appear before the candlesticks show up. So now we know that the 3 could run itself. This is called an inefficient sequence. A sequence where this level is the shit show level no matter what. But that means that if number 3 were to run that low, that's not a 4 and 5. Because this has decided to, I don't want to create a 4 or 5 by doing this very move right here. It's a teenager saying, I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to do it, Dad. Not going to do what you tell me to do. Therefore, this can no longer be a 4 and 5, or rather a 4. You don't actually need the 5. The 3 can also run that low and create number 4, sweeping that. See how we're not running ourselves when we're just doing this very move right here? That's creating number 4. That is something we will run in the next chapter, definitely. But still, we have 2 ways. This characteristic cannot be called a failed 3. I see a lot of people doing that mistake. This is now a failed 3. It didn't do its job. Well, it did do its job. Because its job is to tell us if we're going to go to that 2 or if we're not going to go to that 2. If the job is go up or go down, how can you fail with that job? So 3 could run number 2 like that. And it could be successful in doing its job. But 3 could also run itself. Also be successful at doing its job. Because what the 3 does at a characteristic is tell us how we're going to approach that 2. What are we going to call this sequence? What are we going to call the 1, 2, 3 here? Are we going to call it a inefficient sequence? Or are we going to call it a efficient sequence? That's number 3's job to do. Let's move on to chapter 4. Now we have ran over the breathing room in chapter 1. We have ran over how the number 2 is created and why the breathing room is so important. We've also run over chapter 3, the characteristic of number 3 and how it's deciding if it's going to be a efficient sequence or an inefficient sequence. Now I'm going to bring you with me when I'm noting the other things out for number 4, because this is where it's going to get a bit more tricky and you need to follow along with this. We understand that this is number 3. We understand that that's number 2. We understand that that is number 1 in turn. When we run that low right here, that number 2, we are now in creation of number 4. Some people, again, are used to me saying number 4 or 5 because I'm coming from Dave Teaches FX and I'm coming from Stoic TA. And I've created my whole entire new thing out of this. How I see the market. That's also why I'm pushing a lot on making sure that you see what you need to see. The highly subjective part and how it can be your best friend and change your life. But therefore, we're going to make a crazy shift. From now on, we're not just going to call it 1, 2, 3, 4 because number 5 has never really been important to us. I don't care about the number 5. We actually only have these 4 numbers. And 4 and 5 used to be the same number no matter what. But this time is different. First and foremost, I mentioned in chapter 2 that the 4 and number 1 will be stuck together in one way or another. This is how you do it. The number 1 is considered to be that low to that high into that 2, right? That means that what you could do is drag one of these fibs out, resembling, clearly I'm doing it the wrong way, but hey, that's all right. We are now dragging the fib from this high. We're now dragging the fib from this high into that low, sitting right here. So, meaning we're dragging the fib from here to this point. That's when we drag the 70, the 50%, and the 30%. The 4 has a pretty interesting way of expressing itself. Number 4 is actually a very, very, very important situation for us as shit show traders. Because what makes this model extremely powerful, and you might see me on X talk a whole lot about that you can predict the future, and that's the only thing that I'm doing. Believe it or not, bold statement, right? But that's what I'm doing. I am predicting the future. And at the end of the day, we all are predicting the future. If you're taking your trade over time, you're expecting price to do a specific thing by predicting the future. You are looking to predict the future. That's what everyone is trying to do. But in this industry, we follow along with what people tend to tell us, what sounds good, what kind of hits our ego, right? So, because you can't predict the future because your model is not enough, because it's too complicated. That's why you also believe that you can't predict the future. But me, and why we're seeing 22.7% of all students become profitable within 4 months, they're all predicting the future. And to you shit show traders that have gone through the 6-week program or in the focus group, you know exactly what I'm talking about. You guys know. You've seen it. You're seeing how you're doing it. You know where price is going to move 90% at least of the time. Then it's a matter of being part of it. So that's a fact. That's the difference with the shit show model. It is predicting the future. And I can't sit here and lie and say it does not do it. And this is how we're predicting the future. This is exactly how. The 4 is connected to number 1. So the 4 can do a bunch of different things. It can either run itself, and then in this case, we would become bearish. The 4 could also run number 3, and we would become bullish for the next sequence. Oh, right? The 4 and 5 could be running up here. Let's say we're bouncing on the 70, and then it could take off to the downside. Price could also, by the way, I'm stopping a bit so to make sure that you guys are actually taking notes. The 4 could also do this. The 4 could also do, let's say, this. It can do a bunch of different variations, is what I'm trying to tell you here. But the important part that we're going to note out here is that low. I'll change that color up for you. It's that low. And it's also this number 3 high. By us running that low, let me actually get rid of this for educational purposes. You might notice something. This entire area, if we run ourselves, has now become what? Red. Okay, let's run it back. Isn't that just a breathing room backwards? Interesting. Because what will happen at this point is that the 4 and 5, depending on if it runs itself, will tell us how the next 2 is going to operate. The 4 and 5 ran itself, telling us that the next 2 will be bearish. Here's the next 2 becoming bearish. And now we're in this scenario, but backwards. The 4 could also run above this 3. And in turn, we would wait for simply the next breathing room over here. Because that would tell us that we would have the same sequence yet again. This means that the sequence begins, my friend, and it never stops. The sequence starts off and it simply never stops. We start by finding the first 2, see the sequence, look at the 4. What does that tell you? We will know where the next 2 is going to appear. And it will continue to do that forever and ever and ever. Pretty fascinating, huh? This means that we can be sitting at this low, not knowing what's going to happen next, but we are expecting that if the 4 runs itself, we will predict that number 2 is going to run us lower. What are you doing? You're predicting the future. So now with this, if we were to run this backwards, if that is a green 2 to the upside or a bullish 2 going up, that must mean that we have just arrived by going backwards in price. We have just arrived at something very interesting. There you go. It means it would look like this. 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 doesn't run itself. It runs the number 3 up top, right? As soon as we do that, the next 2 would be bullish into the 4. And this time, let's say it runs itself. I mean, the next 2 is going to be bearish. So with this in mind, let me show you what it looks like when I get rid of all notations. It's fascinating because what's going to happen is it's going to be a bunch of squiggly lines. And you will not be able to tell that you're just reading what ICT might call seeking to store conditions, what people might call bad price action, but as shit show traders, we just call it a sequence. Us shit show traders are able to operate what people can't operate. You need to understand that this informational loop has an end to it. It could stop. You don't have to know more. You don't need to be time based. You don't need to add a bunch of additions and indicators. You don't need that. Look at this price action that I've just drawn out. Just a couple of seconds ago, this was clear, explainable through numbers. And now your mind is telling you, what in the world am I watching? And for many of you, utilizing market structure, imagine where and how many times you would be stopped out in price when you were operating this. Imagine how many of you would say, but this is a fair value gap, and you would be stopped out. Imagine how simple it could have been understanding this. What you guys can't operate, it's not necessarily your fault, is what I'm trying to say. We have, so to say, if they can even call themselves that, mentors out there that don't know what they're doing. They are using something repackaged. They're operating something that a lot of people are already using, and they're changing the names. They're flipping things upside down. They're changing things, right? But this right here is something new. It's completely different. And it's simple. What I just explained to you right here is how I'm operating the market every day. It's no hidden things. The only addition is entry models and entry techniques. But believe it or not, my friend, I believe in fractality of price. That means that you can go on any time frame. As a scalper, go down to the tick charts. You will see the same thing. For a lot of people out there, it's an endless loop of information. And I used to be there. I used to be there. I know what you feel and what you think. That's why I'm doing this. That's why I want to do this. The best thing for me is to see other people succeed. That's going in my storyline. I'm able to be part of somebody's life to the better. I want to be the person that past Jay only wish existed, but he could not find. Clearly, what I've explained here is just the tip of the iceberg, though. I'm not saying that there's more additional information that you need to know, but for me as a person, it's very important to understand why. The why behind it, the deeper explanations. And to do that, yes, you need to pick my brain. You need to be part of what I'm actually thinking behind all of this. What am I seeing behind the breathing room? What am I seeing behind every low and every high? What is the why within the why? People tell you that the market is not predictable. You can't explain it. I can. And I'm not just saying it, I'm explaining it to hundreds and hundreds of other very, very successful individuals. They have become successful. One individual going to prison, about to go to prison, he had about $400 to his name. He had never received a payout. He didn't know what the Schichtelmann was. He didn't even understand English. You understand me? He did not understand what I was saying to you right now. He used AI for translation in the 6-week program. From not knowing the information, not knowing what I was speaking, what language, how he could interpret my words. The 20th of December, 2025, he joined the 6 week program. The 6th, 16 days later, about, he had his first ever payout. 16. That's 2 weeks into the 6 week program. Now, if this resonates with you, only if this information resonates with you, my friend, I highly advise you to join the 6 week program. The reason being is if this resonates with you, not only to the level of, oh, he's doing so good. Jay is such a profitable, amazing trader. He understands everything and I want to understand. No, this is not for you if that's the case. Then you are going to skip, learn, and practice. You're just going to piss off. And I hope you do. Because I'm not going to try to put you into that informational loop again, my friend. You are going to waste your time. Time you are going to waste. A shit ton of time. But if this resonates with you, if it makes sense, you go, oh, holy smokes. Now I can explain my losses. Now I can explain this. Now I can explain that. That's when you should join the 6 week program. But I wish that somebody just that sentence told me that. People not trying to drag me in because, this is such a high profitability model and this and that. No, I'm not that type of person. If this resonates with you, your mind, how you are wired, that's when you should join. But understanding this by yourself, it's going to take a lot more time, a lot more brain power. Because everything that you're trying to figure out, I've already figured that out. That's why I can do this in 6 weeks. That's why you can go through that information loop and you will never need me again. That's the truth. That's the exact truth. I'm not looking to keep you in a loop. You don't have to use this to succeed. You need to find what fits you. And don't let any other guru out there tell you otherwise. It's not something wrong with your brain. That's not how it is. You just haven't found what fits you. You are trying to take something that doesn't fit you. It's like putting on a shoe that is too tight, too small. It's going to hurt when you walk. It's going to be very tough. It's going to be tough to operate. It's going to be tough to handle. So, matter of fact, I believe that if you find the perfect fit in terms of a model, if this, for example, resonates with you, the psychology aspects will be very, very much easy to handle. It's simple. It's calm. The market is calm. Nobody's stressful. We're pulling in a lot of hours. You can go back into the intro. Just pause when I'm showing the weekly results. That's just out of 4 weeks. We have a way more many weeks than that. But it's calm. The market is calm. We're having a good time. Putting in that work is not hard when you have something that fits your personality perfectly. It's not hard to do more work then. It's not hard to back this. It's fun because you understand. You're not forcing yourself into something. Imagine if the market was fun for you. So no matter if you decide to go with this stuff because this resonates with you, or if you decide to go into stoic stuff with longer term trading, I'm more of a scalper again. Yes, you can do that. It needs just to fit you personality wise, right? It needs to fit you as a person. You can go with the DTFX and market structure if that fits your personality. Find what fits you. Because if you don't find what fits you, it will operate you. You need to operate it. and it being the model. This, ladies and gentlemen, is the shit show model. Thank you for your time. I appreciate you all. I wish you happy trading. And to you shit show traders out there, kick ball with NQ. Talk to you soon.